This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description. Hello and welcome everyone to our 264th session of HalloCasa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Kellee Buhler from New York City. Kellee is a New York City luxury real estate broker at Compass, a certified divorce specialist and a global real estate advisor. She specializes in luxury condominiums, townhouses and new development across Manhattan and select Brooklyn neighborhoods, and is uniquely qualified to guide clients through the complex and often emotional process of selling real estate during divorce. Beyond her brokerage work, Kellee is deeply involved in the industry at leadership level. She's a co-founder of Global Girls Collaboration, a former president of FIAPSI USA, and has held senior roles with REPNI and the National Association of Divorce Professionals. She's also known for working with a smaller core of groups of clients to deliver high-quality, personalized, high-touch services. Kellee, thank you so much for your time today. I'm really honored to have you on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience in your own words?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today, so thanks for having me. I think you said a lot of it, but yes, I am a New York City-based real estate agent. I have been doing this for 20 plus years as my day job. I am uniquely qualified because I also have some different specializations, including divorce, which you mentioned, and global. I love doing global. For many years, I've assisted foreign nationals purchasing in New York City, as well as advising US-based clients where in the world they should be investing for a variety of reasons, be it retirement or high ROI or residency via real estate purchases. So I do a lot of it. I love what I do, and I'm happy to answer questions for you here today.
You have been in real estate for quite some time. What motivated you in the first place to to go into real estate?
I think like most people in real estate, it was not plan A. It was more of a plan B. So I fell into real estate when I was very young. We won't say how young because I don't want anybody to do the math as to how old I am right now. But I was on track to go to law school. I was attending university in New York and took a little break, said, oh, let me just get my real estate license. It'll be something fun to do in the meantime before I circle back to going to school. And did it, started it, loved it, realized there was no maximum salary I could make at any point in time. It was all up to me. As much as I put into it, there was unlimited potential to get back from it, and stuck. And then 2-3 years into it, I thought, what am I going to do? Go to law school and start in a mailroom and work my way up the corporate ladder? It didn't seem appealing to me at that point. So I think because I have a very entrepreneurial spirit and I'm a Capricorn and I love setting goals and achieving things, this really turned out to be a good fit for me as far as a career and a profession. And then of course, you add in the fact that you can do global real estate, which gives you a great excuse to travel around the world and see the world. And I've been hooked ever since.
New York real estate, becoming an agent in the early days, I think there's not much more challenging what you can choose to do because it is a very competitive market overall in general. Plus, then you have the hustle of Manhattan and of New York City. How was that? How did you make it? Because I think you also have a fallacy rate of 80%, maybe within the, 6 months.
Oh, you mean people who leave real estate? Yeah, it's not easy. But like the Frank Sinatra song says, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So it wasn't easy. I had to, again, I was very young when I got into it. And I got into it at a time when there was not actually a lot of women in real estate. And those that were older, maybe divorced, and catering to that clientele. So coming in young and fresh was difficult. I had to start building the relationships, which I think we all know. If you want longevity in this business, this is a relationship business. So I started to build the relationships with the doormen, with my colleagues, with people of my own age that had parents that were out there transacting or interested in purchasing real estate, and really dug in that way and did all the things that I think we all try to do: the mailing, the networking, you name it, I did it. And then eventually you learn what works for you. I think everybody's personality is different. You do better off maybe on the sales side versus the buyer side. I learned early on, I really enjoyed working with buyers. And so I stuck with that when everybody else said, oh no, that's not what you should do, because on the sales side is where you have the listings and that equals the money. Buyers are never going to be loyal. But instead, I feel like my personality and my ability to bond with people and actually liking seeing different properties all the time instead of selling the same property, and being able to engage with them as we're walking from apartment to apartment and learn about their lives and their hopes and their dreams and all that good stuff really helped me to bond. And then before I knew it, they were referring a lot of their friends to me. And so that's really where my niche was early on, working with buyers of a certain age group and income bracket. And then it moved into different neighborhoods and then eventually onto consulting for developers. So I've done a lot of different categories, but I didn't try to do everything at once. And I really tried to learn the skill sets needed to be a good agent and really be the best advocate for my clients. And I feel like that is what early on maybe helped me, because it wasn't just about the transaction. It was about really asking the question, what is truly the best outcome for my buyer or seller, but buyer in this case.
Did you go full-time directly, or did you do it like many other people do? Okay, I need my day job, I need a little of a salary, and then I do it in the evenings because I need the patience in order to survive the first months. How did you do it?
So I did it full-time to begin with. Most people in New York City will start out as rental brokers. That's where they'll get their feet wet. I did that a little bit, but I didn't love it because the way that fees were charged back in the day, the fee was traditionally charged to the buyer. And so it became difficult to have buyers stick with you and not try to circumvent paying a fee. And I just felt like it was a lot of running around. It wasn't really what I felt was a good fit for me. But that is in New York City how still today a lot of newer agents will start to learn the business. They'll become affiliated with a firm. They'll do rentals because rentals is quicker money. We have condos and co-ops and townhouses in New York, but what I think most people don't realize is that a large percentage of our housing market are co-ops, which require board approval. It's actually purchasing shares in a private corporation. And so you have to do complete financial disclosure. You have to go through a pretty overwhelming application process that at the end of the day, if the building does not feel you financially can, afford this apartment, they can reject you. And that is a long process. So that is usually minimum of 3 months, sometimes 6, sometimes 8 months by the time you get from a contract to a closing to go through that extra step. So money is not quickly coming your way if you're doing co-ops every day.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you need to, I think, come into this business in any city or any town knowing and being prepared that you better have enough money for at least a year's worth of your living expenses before going full time.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I heard that about co-ops, and I once said, it sounds like in the US it might be easier to buy a weapon than it's me being European. I'm sorry, I have to fast forward to the real estate market right now at the moment in New York City, also from an international buyer's perspective, investor's perspective. What do you normally say in calls when you talk to someone? How do you describe right now the market situation?
So when we're talking about foreign buyers specifically, and it does trickle over to local as well, but local can be a little more finicky because they're up close and personal with the city itself. So they see the day-to-day. But with foreign buyers in particular, New York is always, has been, and will always be a marquee piece of real estate to own. And historically, especially if you're doing a longer, definitely 7+ year hold, you're making money on your real estate in New York. So I always explain it to foreign nationals as you're buying in New York for liquidity, lifestyle, and legacy. So it's about, for many of them, parking assets in a dollar-based, actually parking money in a dollar-based asset, one that's a hard asset. So if they're coming from a place where maybe their currency isn't as stable or there's political unrest or whatever the reason, shifting that money over here and parking it in a hard asset like a Manhattan apartment has a big payoff down the road for them, both security wise and the legacy aspect of it. It's about being able to then pass that on to the next generation and either that physical property or the money that can be cashed out of that property. And then it's about lifestyle. In New York, we have flights to go everywhere around the world. We are very accessible. We offer culture that not a lot of other cities do every which way. We offer entertainment, excitement, just you name it, you can do it here in New York. You can order whatever food you want at 3 a.m. So it is about those three things. And that has been my personal experience with my foreign national clients. They want to park money, and they many times want to offer that apartment up as a place for their kids to live while their kids might be attending New York University or Columbia University, and give them a paper trail coming into the US through that piece of real estate that then they can benefit from for years to come. So it doesn't matter ultimately who our president is, what might be happening in the world. I have been doing this long enough to see many unfortunate events occur in this city, from September 11th, the hurricanes, to financial services firms collapsing. And through it all, New York real estate has held its own, and people still come and they still buy it and they still want it.
Are there certain micro neighborhoods you would say stand out at the moment where you say, okay, across the board, apart from the fact that maybe everyone obviously has different needs and money is for many people abundant in this segment, but do you see like right now anything within New York City which is very on the rise, pretty much?
Since right before the pandemic, Brooklyn, certain neighborhoods in Brooklyn were really coming on strong. I think I'm one of the few people to still live in Manhattan. All my friends are over in Brooklyn. Then during the pandemic, there was a big migration to Brooklyn because it's lower density. You didn't have all the 200 unit buildings, and people were trying to get fresh air and have more space and home offices. So there was a big migration to Brooklyn, and that has not slowed down since. Brooklyn actually became more expensive price per square foot, certain neighborhoods in Brooklyn, over Manhattan in recent years, which was never the case prior to that. Now what we're seeing is neighborhoods are pushing out further in Brooklyn. So you have Bay Ridge as a new Park Slope, and this is getting I need to know your New York City neighborhoods for this part of the conversation.
That's fine.
But you saw a lot of families with children that wanted more room move to townhouses in Park Slope over the last 10 years, or different brownstone neighborhoods in Brooklyn. And those have become very expensive because of that trend. Now you see those same goals being attained by going a little bit further out in Brooklyn to the Bay Ridges and Bensonhurst. Then on the other side, you now have certain neighborhoods which border Queens and Brooklyn, like Ridgewood, Queens, which is also becoming very popular. It's getting the cool restaurants over there now. There's been the migration of the creative people, the younger people, the artists, the photographers, and everybody in those industries, if they were priced out of other neighborhoods and have moved further into that side of Brooklyn, and now they're crossing over into Queens, which we've never really seen that so much. Queens has always been a separate entity, and now you have people that maybe 15 years ago would have been looking for certain neighborhoods like the East Village in Manhattan are saying, no, I want to live in Ridgewood, Queens now.
And this goes all the time. And this goes towards, I'm looking at the map, this goes towards even like Reggio Park, or is it more up north?
Regal Park, yeah. It goes a little bit into Regal Park, but it's more Ridgewood specifically right now because of kind of the cool kids are living over there in that direction now, and there's cool coffee shops and restaurants and that kind of thing.
I understand. So we have a lot of gentrification in Manhattan, and then going spillover Brooklyn, and then up north, and then we might then also from an investor's, and that's why I'm also asking in a detailed way from an investor's point of view, we always, or the investors normally look for appreciation. So it's actually then time almost to anticipate the move towards Rego Park and towards Queens.
Yeah, so I will say this. Investing in New York City has rarely, for most investors, been about monthly ROI. It's great if you can find it, like you can go to those neighborhoods that are a little bit on the fringe or that are up and coming. But New York, from more of an investor aspect, especially if you're talking about Manhattan, has been more about appreciation of capital, equity appreciation. It's been about holding the property. You're not necessarily going to cover your expenses, but you're going to make money in the long term because Manhattan property very rarely goes backwards in value. So I honestly, being in the neighborhoods that I have serviced, don't deal with a lot of investors that are looking for a pure return coming back in on a monthly basis. They tend to be looking for long-term appreciation.
Apart from that, anything else, like also because you're like back to Manhattan, you're based in Manhattan, do you see it still happening, the appreciation?
Manhattan long-term, again, always does. I can't think of a time, there was like maybe a blip after the pandemic when everybody sold really high to leave the city, and then you saw them turn back around and want to come back to the city when the pandemic was over. They had a harder time there making those numbers work. So you did see things go down between the height of the pandemic where people could sell at almost any number, and then a couple of years later not be able to recoup that same high number. But again, I think what's important is we don't have a lot of inventory in the city. That's always been our issue. Manhattan is an island. We can only build up, we can't build out when you're talking about Manhattan. Brooklyn's a bigger landmass, and they have more room to do things, but the developers have not caught up for demand in any of these places, especially if you add back in the pandemic and things slowing down at that time. We've had a lot of tax incentives that the city used to offer to developers to build affordable housing has gone away in the last few years. So it's harder for them and more expensive by far for them to build right now. So we have that on the one hand. We have buyers or owners who still have very low 3% interest rates on their mortgage that don't want to give that up. So they're unwilling to move because now they're going to have to turn around and do a 6%, and they're like, don't want to do it. So again, we have not a lot of inventory, and that I think is keeping our market stable. I wouldn't say that there's one true buyer seller kind of has the ultra advantage right now. It tends to be a little back and forth. There'll be a particular building that might come on the market that everybody wants, and you'll see everybody rush towards it, or a very unique property where you'll see bidding wars. But we're not in that market right now. Do I foresee going forward? I think that we will have a strong market. Our strongest market time of year is always spring, and that is driven primarily by Wall Street bonuses. It always has been that way. When they get their bonuses, they're ready to dump cash into real estate, and everybody else follows them. You would think the other people that are dual salaries that don't get a bonus would just buy in winter when it's lower, but they jump in the pool with the Wall Street gang in that frenzy. And that tends to be when our market is the strongest. And I think we probably will see another bump up of activity as we head towards March and April. And now we're no longer that we used to be a very, I don't want to say one industry town because we've never been a one industry town, but we've always been a Wall Street town, a financial services town. But now every industry is here. Tech is here. Entertainment is here. Fashion has always been here to a certain extent too, but other industries like tech that also get big payouts. Meta has offices here. I've worked with lots of customers that have restricted stock options that they can pull out a couple of times a year. And they're like, okay, let's do this because at my next pullout, I can take $400,000 worth of stock and cash it in. So it's not just Wall Street, it's all of these industries now that have financial advantages specifically attached to different points along the calendar year. And so that's why spring tends to be very strong, and I think will continue to be strong. And you're right, we do have this conversation with our sellers. Listen, you want to wait if it's winter, we'll usually suggest, why don't you wait until spring, because you'll probably have more buyers to choose from at that point. But if you're on the market in the winter, you're a serious seller. You're ready to sell. And if somebody's out looking in the winter, they're a serious buyer. So you have to pick your poison and see what works better for you and your personal circumstances.
Also coming to the limited inventory, so this actually makes sense. I don't know if it was like an explicit smart move from your side to focus on the buyers, but you say, listen, like honestly, Manhattan real estate inventory is very limited. I'm not now fighting for the exclusive listing rights with all the others. Let me just go after the buyers because the world is abundant. Manhattan is abundant. You even expand it. It's much smarter when you're in Manhattan to focus on the buyer, isn't it?
I think so. I think about 90% of my colleagues here don't think that way. They still want to go for the listing. I'm just someone who doesn't like doing 20 shows a day and bringing somebody in, because here in New York, we don't have lock boxes. So always the listing agent and the buyer agent are at all the showings. So while I think that's very important to have a listing agent at the property to explain everything you really do need to know to a buyer, I think that's very difficult in other markets. And I always say to my friends who work in other markets, I don't know how you do that. And they're like, it's in the notes. I'm like, yeah, but it can be in the notes, but still it's much different to have somebody standing there and telling you what you need to know about that particular property or the insider secrets of that building, neighborhood, property, whatever. So I think for me, and again, this kind of flows back over into global, I'm dealing with foreign buyers coming in. So I think being with local buyers also helps foreign buyers and vice versa, because I'm getting to know that market. I'm getting to know those new developments. I'm getting to know what's out there in particular neighborhoods and become very proficient in being able to know what the trends are, what the pricing is, what's happening, what's changing in a neighborhood, what zoning is changing, or any of the things you really should know. I think it helps. Again, I'm one who believes in staying in your lane, like not just staying in your lane, but becoming an expert in your lane in order to offer your best level of service to whomever you're working with. Now, that doesn't say I don't work with sellers. I do, especially when we're talking about divorcing clients. But again, that's a unique aspect of selling. And it's just what works best. Like I used to be a manager at one of the firms here in the city. And I would tell my agents all the time, listen, even if you're a downtown agent, even if the listing is on the Upper West Side, find somebody to team up with on the Upper West Side to actually do your showings versus spending 40 minutes up there and 40 minutes back on a commute, when you can still negotiate, you can still do all the marketing, you can still do everything but physically show that apartment and work together and make it make sense. Make it what am I trying to say? Make it capitalize on the opportunity by being smart about it, not being greedy about it.
Allow myself to switch gears a little bit, and you just mentioned global. First question: where do you see the biggest tendencies from demand and requests coming on a geographical level? Is it Latin America? Is it China? Is it Europe?
So for New York, it tends to be Europe and Asia. So I will say this. The one thing I've always said about New York City, when people say, is it hard to do real estate in New York City? I've always said somebody, someplace in the world has money, right? And so you'll see them coming in droves. Once upon a time, it was Japan was buying up Manhattan. Then the Russians came in and were buying up Manhattan. So you go through these different trends depending on what else is happening in the world economically. And lately, we still see a lot of Asian demand. It was a lot from China. That is where I really made money for a lot of year, working with buyers coming in from mainland China. We see the Europeans shifting around, especially those that might have purchased in the UK previously, because obviously pound sterling is also another very stable economy, but they have recently changed a lot of their rules about taxes for second homes and different tax stamps and things that have changed in the last couple of years. So you see people more looking over here to the US, and Latin America definitely buys Miami. I've always tried to get them all to come up to New York and buy here, but obviously you see a lot of Latin America preferring Miami. you will see like when NAR does its statistics, it will say something like Canadians are purchasing the most in the US. And I think what they don't account for are two things. One, NAR doesn't have New York City's data because we're not part of NAR. We're our own little island, literally, in Brooklyn. So we don't see a lot of that data showing up. But what they're not thinking through or presenting, I think, as accurately as they could, is a lot of those Canadian buyers are actually Indian and Chinese origin buyers who went to Canada first through EB-5 visas. And now that they're on solid footing as Canadians, they're coming into the US and buying. I don't know if it's all just people from Vancouver buying winter homes in Palm Springs, California. I think there's some of that too, obviously, but they're discounting that originally, I think a lot of those Canadian buyers came from somewhere else first. So again, is there like a big trend right now with a certain place of the world that I could say is actively buying New York more than others? Not really. It's still a lot of the same players. We have had some pullback because I think everybody knows like visas have become a little bit more tougher to get and immigration rules are a little bit more, we'll say, tighter. So we have seen some pullback, especially during the last Trump administration. I know for me personally, I saw a lot of my Chinese buyer take a step back because they weren't sure if they could actually physically get into the country easily to see their properties. And also, a lot of things with China has changed in terms of Hong Kong has since gone back to mainland China. And so where money used to be kept offshore in Hong Kong by a lot of mainland Chinese, not so much now. So their money's moving around as well. And there are other viable options like Dubai and places that have become desirable for various reasons in the world. But for New York, we still get a lot of everybody.
I talked to Gene from China the other day, and he said he's getting like around 1,000 leads per day for international potential buyers. And he mentioned that it goes a lot Chinese, then working with a different, at least Chinese speaker. Do you have access? Like, I'm actually surprised that you say you also get deals from Chinese people, because I thought they are just like a closed community and they do the business between each other.
So I was fortunate that I fell into working with Chinese. It was during my era when I was an agent, but I was also consulting for New York developers, the kind that build 200-300 unit buildings here. And a branding company that I knew, because we were working with them on some of the projects that we were developing, actually came to me and said, hey, we're also working with a city in China, or a group in China that's building a purpose-built city that we're branding. And they would love the opportunity to team up with New York developers to invest in the development, but also shadow the process to understand how buildings are built in New York City. So as part of that, in calling up some of my developer contacts and friends and saying, hey, you want to go to China and see if you can take some cash in from people over there, and went, and it turned out to be an interesting experience, but also I was the only agent in the room. And as we were meeting these different developers, these Chinese side developers, and they wanted to park money in individual apartments as well, or buy for their kids, or do something, I then became the agent who was assisting them to do that here in New York. And it was not easy. It is not easy to break into a very close-knit group like that. I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who was leading that kind of summit between the developers, who was originally from China, but who now lives in New Jersey, to say, here are the rules. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. If they say this, you do that. And it really helped me a lot to be able to understand how to navigate that culture, especially when it came to business, and which was a little bit of a challenge, and as a non-Mandarin speaking person. So when it came to time to actually do business, I always make sure I have a translator available for me. So either somebody in the entourage will speak English well enough to be able to do the translation as we go through the process of viewing apartments and everything else. And if not, I will hire the translator to make sure there is somebody that is doing what needs to be done. So is it easy? No. Do you work at a little bit more of an uphill battle than if you were coming from that community or you spoke that language. Yes, but it is doable. And it's the same thing that we talked about in the beginning. It's about relationship building and trust and respect, okay, and doing right by your client. So as long as you keep that forefront of every client relationship, you can make it happen.
And it is worth it because in the end, you stand out as a person who suddenly has access to a totally different bunch of people or new opportunities.
Right. And it comes with, again, navigating those dynamics. Obviously, a lot of Chinese are very much into feng shui. How much into feng shui, you have to find out. There's the ones that only want apartments that face a certain way and don't want to live on a floor or a unit that has an 8 in it, or sorry, they prefer the 8s. But, or you have other ones that are like, no, I don't want to beam across the ceiling because that cuts through the chi energy. And so you learn a whole new facet to what buyers like and what are non-negotiables for them. And I think it's very helpful because then they don't have to go through teaching the learning curve of that with another agent who's not familiar with that.
What do you normally advise when they purchase? Do you say, okay, create your own company, LLC, whatsoever, or stay with your own personal entity and just buy it and transfer the money? What's the best practice there?
I always tell them they need to consult with an attorney, an immigration attorney, a real estate attorney, and an accountant, because everybody's situation is different. But most foreign nationals will create an LLC to purchase in. And one of the reasons is not only for protection, okay, especially if they're renting it out, but it provides protection, but also when it comes to estate taxes, if the person should die, if they have an offshore LLC or offshore entity holding an LLC, then they can avoid paying estate taxes. And there's some other financial advantages too. Again, everybody's different. They need to consult with the professionals, but most will buy in an LLC.
The divorce topic. What makes it so special? Why distinguish between divorce and non-divorce in the first place?
Obviously, there's a lot of emotion and stress typically involved in the case of divorce. And many times the house is the largest asset that couple will own. So it has big financial implications to the outcome as they go their separate ways. And so it can become very contentious. Divorce in itself usually comes with divorce attorneys, judges, or mediators, which then sometimes turn into court orders that need to be followed. And so to be able to truly navigate assisting divorcing clients in the right way, someone like myself who's in real estate needs to be aware of all the pieces of divorce. So if there's a court order that needs to be followed, it needs to be followed. The flip side of that is I think a lot of judges also just pick random dates and put it in a court order, not realizing that perhaps, again, if we go back to the example of condo or co-ops that can take longer to put on the market and close, they're not allowing a good time frame to actually get that transaction done. So there's a lot of communication that needs to go back and forth between those that are issuing the orders for this divorcing couple and the professionals that are involved in helping get to the end. So that's part of the reason. And again, I think it does come down to really being able to understand that this is not a typical transaction, that there are new, different parties involved, such as the attorneys, the divorce attorneys, the mediators, and the judges, perhaps, than you would typically see in a traditional sale, and also really how to get the home sold in the right way by addressing and understanding some of the stress points and emotions that are going to perhaps impact the outcome or try to impact the outcome.
Are you sometimes talking more to each other's representative than directly to them?
So usually how it will be is the first rule of being an agent involved in divorce with divorcing clients is to remain neutral and to be fair to both spouses. So one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that all communications go at the same time, written the same way to both parties. Sometimes that's enough, but as a safe to check. There are times when I will copy in their divorce attorneys as well to make sure they too are getting accurate information about what is happening with the sale of the home. And if that's what it takes to keep everybody focused and moving on the correct path, and again, it's not like they have to, like, the attorneys have to necessarily respond. It's usually more of a, here's what's going on, and to almost, I hate to say it this way, but make sure that the babysitters are watching to make sure that the two spouses are following through. Because a lot of this is already pre-decided. I'm just executing what has been decided by the time you get to that point. If you're talking about further along in a divorce. Now, you do have people who are divorcing who say they're going to do it themselves and they believe it's going to all be amicable, and there are no attorneys. But still, that requires, I think people think more hopefully about it than when they get into the nitty-gritty about what triggers are going to come up or what arguments are going to come up, because that is, I think, one of the biggest pieces of working with divorce clients is they're so busy in many cases, especially if they're mad at the other one and it's not an amicable situation, their focus is on annoying the other one or getting something over on the other one. So you might have the spouse who really needs, this is all the money they're going to get from this divorce, and they really needed to sell it for the highest price possible. And the other spouse just wants the divorce over with and wants to sell it as quickly as possible. And as the agent, you're trying to navigate between those two goals, both of which may be unrealistic based on market conditions. So you can't make a number happen in any case with any seller just because the seller wants a magic number. And so there's a lot of stress. And so also what will happen is when it comes time to make decisions, should we do a price improvement? Can we sign with this buyer? Can we sign with that buyer? They're too busy like being mad at each other and they want to annoy the other one that they won't respond quickly. And now you wind up with frustrated buyers, or you lose deals or more time on market because they're just still focused on fighting versus let's do what's best for all of us and get this done the right way before it starts to work against us.
So you could already get your psychology certificate as well, or a degree as well.
Yes. I could have gotten it without the divorcing clients, just with regular clients, but the divorcing clients definitely adds a new aspect to it.
Is there anything apart from that, maybe even some precautionary elements regarding when you get married and say, listen, this would actually help many people on a technical level and less emotional, or both? I don't know. I'm wondering.
From a premarital status, the divorce attorneys that I work with will tell you always get a prenup and plan all this out ahead of time so that hopefully there's not a lot of drama or question marks around what happens in the case of a divorce. Emotionally, yes, you can tell them to calm down. Is it going to work? No, just like it doesn't work with any other seller who gets emotional or invested in the process. But I think when you go into it, again, figuring out who the personalities are quickly and knowing how you have to handle each personality maybe a little differently helps. The biggest thing I would also say is if you're going to work with divorcing clients, be ready to pivot. Be ready to bring in other agents if you need to. I've had that situation where the judge had ordered the husband in this case to have all control over an apartment that had to be sold in New York. And the wife did not want it to be sold. So she did everything in her power to make it very difficult. Lots of threats, lots of problems, lots of no access. And she got to the point, even because I had been hired by the husband, who had every right to do that as per judge's orders, that I was the enemy because she thought I was going to be in the apartment spying on behalf of the husband, which is obviously not what my job was, but she was coming up with anything she could to make it harder. So what we wound up doing is she got to pick her own agent that worked at my company, and we worked as a team. Now, I know there are a lot of agents that get very sensitive when it comes to their commissions and they don't want to split it, but I always see it as do what needs to be done to get to the end game. If this is what's going to help and this is what's going to make this woman feel better, that she has somebody on her side because she feels like she hasn't or doesn't, then let's give it to her. And let's hope that's what helps us move forward. got a little rough in the end, but for a while that bought us a lot of access and communication that was not there previously. And oh, by the way, I was the third agent that they had come to on this divorce because the other two just got so frustrated with the wife's difficulties. They're like, I can't do it. So you have to be willing to figure out what it's going to take to get over the finish line.
What for courses do you have to do in order to become a certified specialist in this?
There are a couple of them out there. The one that I took was created by the National Association of Divorce Professionals, which is a certified divorce specialist. That's one course. I think there are a couple of other ones out there that I looked into, but I did not do. So the course is a course where you learn all the different aspects of what you should be aware of or what you need to know in dealing with all the legal aspects and the personality aspects of divorce. And it's really helped me a lot. It's been a great thing because I think it's a niche that not a lot of agents have tapped into. And maybe they are working with clients that are divorcing and they're just the way it is because those clients came along. But I think there's a lot of value to really understanding some of the things that we never think about. Like I will give you one of my biggest takeaways from that course and now implement when I'm working with divorcing clients that have children, especially young children. We as real estate agents want to go in and tell them, okay, this is how we're going to prep for the sale. You're going to remove every picture you have in here of yourselves because we want to make it less personalized. We want the buyers to come in here seeing themselves living in this apartment, not your wedding photographs. But if you have young children that are already dealing with the trauma and the stress and the anxiety of their parents divorcing and their home about to be sold and all the other things, you think twice about asking them to remove familiar, comforting photos from around the house, or maybe not take all the toys and put it in storage. Like you need to really be sensitive to the children in the process that I think we don't really think about as agents. We just have our way of doing things. Here's how you prep the house for sale, do it. And this was something that really made me open my eyes to being more sensitive to children in general, but definitely children of divorcing parents when selling a home.
You founded, if I may say so, it's called Global Girls Collaboration. I like all three words in it, to be honest. And
good words.
Give us an overview. What is it about?
Okay, so Global Girls Collaboration is a company that I started with one of my best friends. Her name is Dee Dee. She's Michigan based. And we met as part of an international real estate organization many years ago. And both of us did global real estate. And we were go-tos for a lot of organizations or the realtor associations in the United States and even NAR coming to us and saying, hey, can you teach agents how to do global? And global looks different. It can be inbound, it can be outbound, it can be consulting, it can be managing properties for offshore clients. There's so many iterations to doing global real estate. And so we kept being asked again and again to speak on this Zoom, to speak at this conference, or come to this meeting. And we finally got to a point where we said, you know what, there's value, our experience and our knowledge. So let's start a company and create a course where we can teach US-based agents how to actually expand into international. Not just, here, join this club, go on this trade mission, and bam, you do real estate globally. It's really about the building blocks, step by step, of figuring out how not only to do global, but to do it successfully, actually make money from it, and to have it on repeat if you want to replicate it in a different part of the world. And so we created this course. It's called Build Your New Reality, Global Edition. And we've been thrilled at the response that we've gotten from agents that have taken it because they feel like, oh, now I actually know the how-tos, not just the information that was over there. This tells me how to actually do it and walks me down that path to doing it successfully. And so we only run the course a couple of times a year because we still both have day jobs. But ultimately, it's meant to be a collaboration between those agents that want to learn how to do global, and then in itself becomes a network of people that we know we've taught how to do global the right way and can act as a referral source to not only our connections around the world who we put our students in touch with, but also with one another to learn and grow from this unique niche in real estate to capitalizing on it again and again through relationships, which I feel has been a theme of our little chat here today. It always comes back to the relationships and who you know and how to build and benefit from good relationships.
What do you advise people there?
So I think problem number one is that there are a lot of places in the world that don't understand the concept of a referral, like we might in the US, Canada, Latin America. I actually, speaking of China, actually did a speech in China on a stage in front of real estate agents trying to explain the concept of a referral. If you send somebody to the US, you're going to get X amount of dollar back. The other thing is that you have a lot of places in the world where real estate agents are not licensed. And so it's the legitimacy of what policing is there, what oversight is there to make sure the referral will come to you or vice versa. So what I think is most important is what you said. You need to vet the person. You really need to build the relationship and understand what that person is able to offer to your client if it's an outbound referral somewhere in the world. And the same should be happening if it's an inbound referral. That source should be vetting me, you, whomever, to make sure not only are they legitimate, know their stuff, but are they the right personality match for my particular client? I know my clients best. I know, are they going to, do they want somebody who's super serious and data driven, or do they want somebody who's more like the mom that's going to hold their hand and walk them through the transaction? And when you have people that are going cross borders, it's a whole different landscape they're navigating. The laws are different. Who's part of the process is different. Notarios versus attorneys. It just, there's a lot. And so I always say, and it's part of our course, you build your team before you hand over a referral, and you constantly reevaluate that team so that, and also to have plan B, because maybe your first person is on vacation the week that your clients are showing up in that country and you need to have backup person. Or the other thing also I think that's important to add is that a lot of people think, oh, I work for, we'll call it Sotheby's because they're international. I work for Sotheby's in New York. My person's going to France. I'm calling up Sotheby's France and saying, give me a person. To me, that's not how you do a referral. Like you don't even, you're not obligated to even use a person from your same company in a different country. You should figure out who is the best fit for your client's particular needs in that country that you can build a relationship with where you know you can trust them. And then the other thing is that you paper it all up. You know, none of this, you write the emails, you delineate it, you translate it into a different language if you need to. You do all the things and you find the people on the other side that have to sign off. So if an agent doesn't have the authority to pay a referral fee, but their firm owner or their broker does, that person's on that agreement and they're signing that agreement. So can you protect yourself in every case? No, but you can do a lot to get very far along the road that you need to feel a certain amount of confidence that you are going to get paid at the end of the transaction. And that's what I would say. So many people want to just do a handoff to somebody they met at a meeting and got a business card from. And in my opinion, that's not the right way to do it, ever. No, so some of the firms do have affiliate relationships, either with their own firm or somebody else somewhere in the world. So hopefully they've already created documentation for that type of referral from one firm to the other, that they've had the lawyers in each country check and recheck and make sure that it's kosher. If it's not that situation and it's not set up in that way and you're going outside of the norm, then yes, I do, to the best of my ability, find out what laws govern the place that I'm handing that referral to. What are the avenues to explore if that person doesn't pay me? Like, who should be, what do I need to have in writing to protect myself to the best ability that I can, short of international laws? So I will do what I need to do. And yes, it will be a DocuSign or some sort of signed piece of paper. Again, not just with the agent that I might be referring to, but whomever has control over whether or not I get paid at the end of the day. Your business terms are your business terms. They can be whatever you want them to be. Okay. If you know that you're going to send 100 people to a developer in the Dominican Republic and they're saying, I'll offer you X, you can say, no, I want Y based on if I bring you 5, if I bring you 10, this is how it's going to look. So I would say that's first. Know that you can always create your own business terms that you want to agree to as long as both sides agree to it. I do outline my expectations with the other side. So for me, it's more about you will check in with me every 2 weeks and give me an update. You will notify me on certain milestones. If my client's making an offer, if my client has a contract that's been signed, I want to know. Because I think also what people don't realize is they don't think of all the collateral that can happen during a transaction. So, for example, I remember asking somebody that a lot of us know that promotes a lot of, he's a developer promoting a lot of products in Central America. And he has agents that he wants to have them refer to his product in XYZ country. And I said, okay, what happens if I send my client down there and they don't like your project? Then what? Do you have an agent that you take them down the road to see the other project? And he said, no. And I'm like, I would need to know. Because otherwise what they're going to do is they're going to walk into that local real estate company that they passed by on their way to cocktails, and they're going to buy through them, and I'm out of referral fee. So you have to have contingent plans, and you have to be very transparent about understanding what the process looks like and what you expect, and making sure that other side is going to meet your expectations. Like, for example, I know this sounds ridiculous, but we say it in our course. I want to know what kind of car you're driving my clients around in whatever city. I want to know, are you meeting them at the airport? What are these other little touch points that you can do? Because I never want to lose my client, right? I don't want to hand them off and never see them again. Now, I know there are lots of agents who do that. I don't think that's the best way to do business and build longevity from it. But I'm going to basically put in play the things that I expect you to do when I'm handing you my clients. And also, the other thing that no one ever thinks of, and they should, what happens when the cousin comes back and also wants to buy a property in Cabo? Did you build into your original referral agreement, if this leads to other transactions, I also get paid again? I don't think a lot of clients and agents do that. So there's lots to think about, especially with referrals, because referrals are our easiest way to do global. Inbound and outbound referrals are the easiest. They're not easy, but they're the easiest of some of the choices that you can make in terms of global.
Because I think what you just explained, you talk real business, to be honest. It's amazing because you outline exactly those, how do I say it? Those very detailed, nuanced, important elements, which remain very opaque, because what is global? Global is, in my opinion, exactly this. Knowing exactly what to put on paper, knowing exactly how to deal with the other person, and also the entire scope of risks. And you mentioned the collateral, to say, hey, listen, like this can happen. And we need to extend our quality assurance from Manhattan to the Este in Uruguay and say, listen, this is my client. I have done all the work. This freaking dude now flew down, and I don't want him to basically just like being let go, you're too lazy, or you don't do your job, and he's going for another local brokerage. And what happens if we go and he has like another sales? And I think those are the questions which I sometimes ask myself. And I'm also like, let's be honest, how many people do not pay in the end? Does that happen sometimes when you say, listen, I think, I don't know, it seemed the transaction didn't happen, but maybe it did happen? Is that so?
Because you just handed them off and you never checked in again. You just were waiting for the referral check. Yeah. I've never had that happen. I'm sure it has happened, but I think that's the default position. I think for a lot of agents are, I'm Sotheby's, I'm just going to refer it to Sotheby's London and wait for my referral check. Here's the name. That's all that goes over, name and maybe what they're looking for. And then they just sit back. How do you know? Okay. How did that help you stay in the transaction with your client? Like, to me, that first meeting is on Zoom. It's my client, it's the referral agent, and it's me. And I'm making sure that referral agent is answering the questions that my clients has, that they are explaining how the process works in that country, that they are going over the steps that need to be taken, so that also that I see that there's a chemistry, a personality match between the person I'm referring to and the person I'm referring. Because if it's not going well, I'll change it up. I'll make sure, because it has to be what's best for my client, because you want your client to always come back to you first, no matter where they want to transact in the world. You need to be that person that always does right by them, that's always there advocating for them, especially when you're doing global. The rules change quickly. It's a whole new ball game.
And you are your network, absolutely. You are your network, absolutely. When is the next course starting? Do you have anything planned?
Well, yeah, the course is actually starting this Sunday. So we're doing it January 25th. We don't know when the next course is going to go. It'll probably be sometime around March. Dee and I always have to line up our schedules, and she's in Japan at the moment, and so we have to plan it out. But we have the next one starting this week, so it's not too late. I don't know when this is going to be out there, but they can always get on our VIP list at www.globalgirlscollaboration.com, and we send notifications out to everybody on our list every time we get ready to run the course again.
Is there anything else apart from those elements which you would like to share with your audience, which we haven't touched upon?
No, I think you've done a great job. I was talking away. So hopefully everybody listened and took one or two things away that they can infuse their own real estate business with.
How can people reach out to you if they have any questions and they would like to do business with you?
So you can either reach me at Kellee, Kellee, at globalgirlscollaboration.com, or at my day job, which I'm a Compass agent. So that's pretty easy. That's just kb@compass.com.
Perfect. I will put those into the show notes. Kellee, thank you so much for your time and sending the best regards to Manhattan. And best regards.
Come visit us soon. It's a little cold here right now, but it's good.
Perfect. Okay. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.